Hi, I'm Lisa Andria, Transformation Life Coach. Welcome to the Ladies Who Leap podcast, where guests share their inspiring stories of leaping out of their comfort zone with confidence and power and into a life of purpose and fulfillment. Let's listen to their life-changing stories so that we can all learn how to gain the courage to take a leap of faith into a life that we love so that we can all be Ladies Who Leap. Let's get started. Welcome to the Ladies Who Leap podcast. I appreciate that you're taking the time to listen to the inspiring stories of people that took a leap of faith to reach new heights in their life. My goal is that their stories inspire you to take the first steps of many to follow your own unique dreams. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing you to Katy Goshtasbi. She is a lawyer, emotional intelligence and branding expert, and founder of Puris Consulting. She works with law firms, women professionals, and organizations on growing in size and profits by mastering their identity and voice in order to develop brands that get their message out effectively. Happier, healthier, more authentic professionals equals a more profitable and effective career. Katy has authored 2 books and has a 3rd book coming out. So when do you expect the 3rd book to come out? Because this is going to be out, in perpetuity.
Oh
So
goodness, yeah, by November. That's the goal.
November of 2024, everyone, she should have her 3rd book. So look for that.
We put it out there.
So welcome to the Ladies Who Leap podcast.
Thanks for having me, Lisa. I appreciate you very much.
We met at the Dr. Matt James NLP practitioner training that we just did the end of 2023.
Yes,
So we are now both NLP master practitioners.
correct.
Congratulations yourself.
Thank you.
I know from your history, you were born in Iran and experienced being an immigrant to the US. Can you talk to that experience as a child and how it shaped you as an adult? This is kind of your beginning stages of life, and that's always interesting to understand where you came from.
Sure. I tell the story often from the stage. So I'm actually a refugee, and it was my editor last year, or maybe 2 years ago, my book editor said, you're not an immigrant, you're a refugee. And I was like, some words, labels like change you, right? So I was like, I guess I'm a refugee. So, and 79 when the Iranian Revolution kicked up in November of 79, um, we're not Muslim, which I don't care what religion you are. I have nothing against any religions, but because we weren't, it wasn't safe for us in Iran anymore. So my dad said to my mom, why don't you take the girls, me and my sister, and go to Indiana, where my mom's 2 brothers lived, for a couple of weeks until the unrest dies down. So as I always say, we packed 2 suitcases thinking we were staying for 2 weeks, and we stayed a lifetime. And I've just been very blessed to have these opportunities in the United States, because I wouldn't have had them in Iran, right? I mean, there are women lawyers in Iran. It's just a very different landscape, let's just put it that way. So how that shaped who I am was, growing up in Indiana was not always easy because I didn't look like everyone else. We didn't eat the same foods. And back in 1979, I was telling this story metaphor and trainers training at NLP. They didn't even have yogurt in the United States. So when my mom would make homemade yogurt, yeah, exactly, people would be like, what's that curdled milk? And so I didn't eat the same foods. I didn't look like everybody else. It certainly didn't speak the language. When they dropped me off at first grade, I remember looking back at my mom and my sister through the little window in the first grade classroom door, like, are you crazy? I don't speak English. Why are you leaving me with these people? And so, I decided I was going to save the world by becoming a lawyer, and I'll tell you more about that story later. But it was a constant quandary of fitting in, is what it was, right?
Yeah, and I think as young adults, I certainly can relate to that too. Different way of not fitting in, but it makes it difficult, and it actually kind of embeds a little bit of trauma in not being able to fit in and how children react to you and it carries with you as an adult. Is there anything in that experience that you kind of look at as a child to see that you've overcome it, that you've even gotten stronger as a result of it, or
Goodness. Well, I mean, everything, all of that, as I've reconciled it over 52 years, and I'm always cleaning up my baggage, right? That's just what I do because I need to be a proper conduit for my clients, right? And hold space for them. And so, oh, so many moments, really honestly, just growing up, not looking and acting like everyone else. There came a time not too long ago where I was like, maybe like 10, 15 years ago, where I was like, well, why do I want to fit in anyway? What's the point of fitting in? What's the point of being like everyone else? Like, isn't the whole point of branding to have a unique selling proposition? And this is mine. And so I don't want to fit in. And I don't choose to fit in because I like being the black sheep. I like being the creative one. I like having the cool ideas. And so every experience from being beaten up as a kid and looking different. I mean, you're right. There was trauma involved in all of that. Let's not like candy coat any of this. As a child, you want to fit in. And then hopefully as you grow up and you go through the layers of baggage, I just woke up and said, I don't want to fit in. Part of it was I'm just not going to struggle against this anymore. But part of it was just like relief, like freedom of like not having to conform, right? I mean, there's a fine line between anarchy and being a rebel and not upholding the law, but also being independent and free to think for yourself. And
what a great story too, sharing the story of how you where you started and where you went to, where you created your own life and your own timeline and your own um, success, basically. Because and how did you end up becoming a lawyer? What was it that chose how did you choose that particular profession?
So, growing up as a kid in Indiana, you had a choice of three careers as an immigrant, right? Everyone should know this. If you're not an immigrant, you can either be a lawyer, a doctor, or an engineer. So, I couldn't handle the sight of blood, so that was out. And engineering, a lot of my family's engineers. I'm just an extrovert. The concept of engineering bores me. So, I was like, lawyer it is. And I decided I was going to save the world, Lisa, by becoming a lawyer. And I put myself through undergrad and law school. And I really loved law school. It really felt good. And I had a fantastic career as a result. I think what I was always looking for, though, was one part finding my purpose, but the other part was more about self-confidence and owning who I was, right? And so I thought, well, as an immigrant refugee who didn't fit in, self-confidence could be found by having this title of being a lawyer. And I had a great career. I was a federal lobbyist on Capitol Hill in DC. Like, who gets to say they're a federal lobbyist? Maybe no one wants to, but with this political climate, but then I was at the Securities and Exchange Commission when a company called Enron, when some of your listeners may not even know who Enron is anymore. And then from there, I went to a major law firm in their DC office. And then I went in-house. In-house means you go to a company, and I did that here in Southern California. But here's what was interesting about my journey. As I was going through the process, every 2 years somebody offered me a job, right? So I knew how to stand out and I knew how to resonate who I was. And then people started asking me for coaching advice, other lawyers. Hey, how did you do this? How can you do that? How can we help? And I would just take people to lunch because I was a busy lawyer just like they were. Then I realized, oh my gosh, I am now giving business development advice. And don't people know how to do that? And I guess they didn't. And that was the start of the second career. So that was how I became a lawyer. And it was great while it lasted until I decided that I was done with it.
Yeah, I was gonna, because the next question was gonna be, how did you get the epiphany of changing and evolving your career and then start coaching? So you've kind of explained what that was all about.
Yeah, well, there's a little more to it. So, when a lawyer goes quote unquote in-house, it's kind of like you've arrived, right? So you're making a lot of money, supposedly, and it's supposed to be easier work. Well, The money is accurate, but it was never easier work, at least in my practice area. I was an investment management lawyer. It always just felt like I would ask other lawyers, I'd be like, is this what we're supposed to do for the rest of our lives? Like, is this meaning in my life? And people would look at me like, what are you talking about? Go back to work. But I was starting that inquiry because I've been very spiritual all my life. And so at that point, when the work started to become really monotonous and unfulfilling, now do not misunderstand me, listeners. Being a lawyer is a very noble career, I believe, and we need good lawyers out there to do good work. And there's plenty of good lawyers doing investment management work. I just was not meant to be that. And so it was the day I was in house and my gastroenterologist said, Katy, the stress of this job is going to kill you. You need to quit. And I was like, what? And here I was, a single woman who had put myself through undergrad and law school. And I said, what, are you going to pay my bills? That thought, Lisa, stuck with me. And it was later on, a couple months later, it was after work one day, I went home and opened up my own mailbox. It was late at night. I'd spent 15 hours like drafting this much of a prospectus, dealing with operations and marketing and the finance department. And there was one of my own prospectuses in the mailbox. And reflexively, what did I do? I threw it away because people don't read their prospectuses. And that was the moment I was like, oh my gosh, this is not what my life is meant to be. This is not my purpose. I'm not saying prospectuses aren't important and lawyers aren't important. It just wasn't my path anymore. So there was drama, took some drama, and then I just quit. And I left all the money on the table, and I guess some would say fame, which is kind of funny because we're not famous as lawyers, but it felt that way because there weren't many lawyers women doing what I was doing. And then I just started working on myself and looking at all the things now I teach other people. But this was 2006. People were not recreating themselves. Um, there
Life
was
coaches weren't even a common word. I know that because I didn't discover them until 2019. So yeah, it was well before it was more common to hear the name life coach or any kind of coaching. Yeah.
coaching, any kind of discovery, self-discovery. And we
Mhm.
were coming up onto the Great Recession. But what I did know is I looked around and I thought, everyone hangs their hat on being with a corporation or being with a business, being an employee, but they don't know how to harness their internal power of their own personal brand. And then that phrase, personal brand, became overused and abused and popular. I still really stand behind that idea that everyone is empowered to create who they are,
Yes.
their own message and their own life and their own brand. And maybe that harkens back to, me accepting myself for not fitting in. And that's how this second career was launched. So that was 15 years ago, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So Ladies Who Leap, the podcast is about women taking that leap of faith in themselves to be able to find and do what their purpose and passion is. So this is exactly what journey you went on and started 15 years ago. What more, can you talk to the process and how it helped, how you got that confidence to be able to shift your work and look at yourself inward to be able to find what your true purpose was? I know that people were coming to you, which was a very nice thing. So you had a little bit of a kind of a kickstart in that sense. But what was that process like? Where did you find kind of the gumption to do it, I guess is the way to put it.
Really is the million-dollar question. People were coming to me, but that didn't mean that I had self-confidence. They were just organically coming to me. Now I look back, that was a very strong signal. But there was no one doing what I do for other people right now. There was no one guiding people through the self-discovery process. People thought I was nuts. I thought I was nuts, like leaving all that money, career, all of that. Here's the thing, I just couldn't go back. Like,
Mm.
what was I going back? I'm very pragmatic too, but as I've learned and as all my work is a function of, I'm very well balanced and harmonized between my left linear analytical brain and my right brained creative, free flow, broad process perspective. I was like, my left linear brain was saying, well, what are you going back to? You don't like doing that. And I just always remember my dad used to say to me, he was in sales, a very stressful world he lived in. But one day I remember he said to me, Katy, if you don't like getting up in the morning and going to work, you have to change that. And honestly, some days I'm like, did he really say that? Like, I can't distinguish, but it doesn't matter. My unconscious mind remembers the reality that I remember, and it's relevant. And that really stuck with me. And I was like, why the hell would I ever do anything that I woke up and I didn't see myself serving my greater purpose in? But it was a long road and there was a lot of pain and confusion. I'm not going to candy coat it. And I wish I had someone holding my hand the way I do with others. But I took this random community college class. And I had discovered the beauty of community college because I went to a Big Ten school in Indiana. And the ad said, what do Oprah, Bill Gates, and Warren Buffett have in common? And I and my intuition just was on fire all of a sudden. And it said they're all practicing their natural talent. And I was like, sign me up. So it was a 3 hour class taught by, of all people, Lisa, an ex-Harvard litigator. And he really, I was like, wow, I can't get there. And I was like, I was $50 on a Saturday. I had nothing to do. I was retired, right? And he really made me understand that we all have an innate talent, not like being a good lawyer or being a good doctor, but there's other innate talents that anchors us to our strength, and that is our self-confidence, right? And so it was, he called me at the end of class up to his lectern and he said, you got to do this for your fellow lawyers. And I just looked at him and I said, do what? I was so exasperated. He said, you'll figure it out. And I still always think of him very fondly. We actually incorporate a natural talent into all our work with clients. Because I called him, I said, hey, Curtis, can you do this for my clients? And he said, no, you got this. You can figure it out. You can use my material. And I was like, what? You don't want business anyway? So that kind of started, and it was a lot of reinvention, a lot of figuring things out. But what I always did was I stuck to my guns because I knew that it felt right. Even when the self-confidence wasn't necessarily high, I knew it felt right. And so I've always been highly reliant on my intuition, as I think everyone should be, because we're all highly intuitive beings if we allow that. So in sometimes in the still spaces, I would say, okay, what do I need to do next? And it is a leap. It's about the faith orientation. And there were many days where I was like, this is just BS. I'm gonna go find a job and be an FTE somewhere, full-time employee. Something wouldn't allow that to happen though, despite all the hardship, really, honestly. And I created all my programs from scratch because I loved doing that. And I could tap in and see intuitively what people needed. That's always been my strength. So I know I'm always a couple years in front of the market. Again, that's not wow, catchy. That's knowing what my strengths are and allowing that to boost my self-confidence. Plus a whole host of other things that, you and I know to do to like keep clear, right? And do the right things to stay energetically focused. So did I always have self-confidence? No, I don't think self-confidence happens overnight. In fact, I've done formal research at UCLA. There's a direct inverse correlation between stress and self-confidence. According to my formal research, as stress goes up, your self-confidence drops proportionally, even for the most self-confident person. So when I could get my stress down, following my own research, my self-confidence would go up proportionally, and I would be much more eloquent, coherent. I could hear my intuition better, and I could show up and get business and help more people.
Oh, that's a really good piece of information because I know sometimes when I get stressed, let's say about money for some reason, it affects the work that I do. It affects how I feel about myself. And I did not know there was actual research that proved that that is the case, stress and confidence being linked in some way. So that's really good information. So you do combine your intuitive and sensitive nature with your leadership experience, right? To help clients and businesses to get to their full potential. So can you talk to the work that you do? Maybe give an example of a specific client that was enhanced and you had a big impact on?
Wow, over 15, 16 years, I've been so blessed. There's the individuals that go through my group programs. So many people that have come through, a lot of women lawyers saying, I don't know if I want to be a lawyer anymore. I don't know how to negotiate my salary. I don't know how to sell well. So many of those women, there was a woman lawyer. She ran a law firm in the Midwest, and she was doing really well for herself with two support staff. Yet she just wasn't self-confident and didn't have also the tools she didn't want to grow the business actually. She just wanted to be clear on what she was, where are we setting our intention and where are we going? And so really it was the foundational stuff of here's your, let's have you own your story, and let's have you clear out the baggage around your story, and let's have you find your natural talents through all those assessments and your personal brand assessments. And then let's put it all together so that the business fits who you are, right? And so then her business organically grew proportional, and she could master it and handle it. And her team went through my program too. And so they were empowered to grow the legal practice. That's one example. The other examples, larger corporate entities, right? When they do mergers and acquisitions, it's always about the employees. How do we harness the best of the employees so that the business can grow, but also so that we honor the humanity of people in corporate America or in any organization. I do a lot of international work too. The UN showed up one day at my door. So it's also about the healing of the people, and yet it drives the bottom line. So the emotional intelligence piece of it becomes very important. I give those assessments. And so, for instance, we had a company, we're still there actually. They went through one reorg. The CEO brought me in. I usually enter through the C-suite and I coach the C-suite executives. And they had to go through a spinoff or a downsizing, we'll just call it. So worked with the senior leadership team on what does that look like? Who are you, right? Again, we always fundamentally start with who are you as a person, and then how does that show up as a leader? Managing your staff, making good decisions, problem solving, owning your emotions, being able to express your emotions, stress management. I mean, there's so many things we test for. And then now how are we going to communicate all that effectively to the people we're downsizing, to the day-to-day work, to your home life, because everyone brings their baggage to work. And as a result of that, then they did end up downsizing, and I'm still there because there's still another function that they're going through. So it really is about the senior leadership team being able to understand that they serve a greater purpose rather than just being somewhere, right? And running a business. And fundamentally, when they tap into that and start owning their profoundness as an emotional being, it makes a difference. And it's not soft skills. It really, there's no such thing as soft skills. These are durable skills because we're looking at the skills of a human being who shows up at work, right? But what we found is that regardless of any client, people think, I had one client, an executive at a defense contractor, CFO, but there was multiple CFOs because the organization was so big. He said, I don't express my emotions at work. And I said, why? And he said, because that's how I manage my stress. And I said, oh, wow, is that working? And he said, no. I said, so it's having the opposite effect, right? And he said, how is that possible? And I said, because you're stuffing everything down and then you're wound up and then you show up very morose in front of your clients. And he even said it, he said, in front of his staff, excuse me, he even said it, he said, one of my staff members, I was giving feedback to him and he looked up at me and it was male to male, right? And he said, I don't know what to think here. And my client said, I looked at him and I said, what do you mean? And he said, I can't tell if this is good information, if you're mad at me, if I'm supposed to be doing something differently. You don't look anything, right? And so, you leave your employees very frustrated when you don't emotionally resonate, you don't emote for all sorts of reasons, right? Mostly men are taught, and women, keep your emotions at home. They don't belong at work. Well, then people keep their humanity at home. They're inauthentic, and no business grows, no business thrives that way. You can't make more money. You can't get in new clients that way. So there's so many examples, and we don't have enough time, but those are just a few off the top of my head.
Thank you, because it seems like the corporate world, working world, owners, C-suite, everyone is changing. It is shifting, and you're a part of that because having people understand that we are all human beings, we all have emotions, we all should kind of listen to our heart and also to our own intuitive nature, and kind of relish in the fact that we are all unique, and that you can still and actually be much more productive by learning and understanding emotions, and also understanding how to express them compassionately and in a way that is conducive to where you're working, right? But still being able to share and yourself and being authentic. And that way, with clients, with people who work for you, with people you work with, it's just so much more beneficial. This is a different time. You know, when we were kids and when we were working, it was nothing about that. Nobody talked about emotional intelligence. And I think that's a bit why women in business have become so effective in what they do, because we have really nurtured the emotional intelligence in us. We put it at bay quite a bit because we had to, but it's there and it's easily tappable. I don't know how you've experienced it, but thank you for all that insight and just understanding that you're trying to help with corporate America, trying to help it because it's going to benefit all of the employees that are working there too. So
Absolutely, and helping the employees. I mean, the engine of a business, whether it's a law firm or a corporation or an organization like the UN or any other international bank or anything, is people think the engine is like operations, the technical things. I'm like, no, it's the people.
it's
And yet
people.
with the least amount of thought, why? And I get why, because I mean, HR tells me this all the time in all my organizations that we work in. They're like, God bless you, because we're not going to roll up our sleeves and get in the trenches with people. And they're right. Like, a third party consultant is seen differently. HR is not seen that way. HR is not equipped for that. And HR cannot divest themselves because they're also employees. So HR, running the benefits, doing all the stuff that they're very important and good at is important. But how can we expect revenues to go up if we don't honor the people that do the work, right? It just seems very basic to you and me, and it is for most people. It's just so often they tell me, I don't know, I didn't sign up for leadership. I just am a good X, Y, and Z. That's what I went to school for. And so we really start from the beginning. Fundamentals of leadership is all of this stuff, right? How do you give good feedback? How do you make good decisions? I mean, the list is endless, and people just want support. So, as a coach, it's like you're that ear. And a lot of my clients, because they're C-suite, they've got no one to talk to but me. Like, they can't even take it home because it really doesn't belong at home. So I'm just always honored to be that person for people because it's important.
That was your calling. You heard the message. You took it on and you're very successful doing it. And I really commend you for that because is very much needed in our world today. So you're filling in a gap that it really needs to be filled. So thank you for
Thank
that.
you, Lisa. Thank you. I'm honored.
So one of the last things I ask of my guests is to provide a quote, mantra, favorite positive affirmation, because people that are listening, there is, even if just one person gets really affected by what they hear in that quote, I think we've done our job, right? It's great that they can listen to everything else, but sometimes it just takes a metaphor of some kind or a quote or a positive affirmation to really affect someone. So what are you going to share with us today?
Really good question. I thought about this. I took it very seriously. So I have a couple, and I couldn't narrow it down, right? Because I think all of it is relevant. So I'm just gonna say them all, and you all can pick. But it all depends on where you hail from and what you're looking for. So because I do a lot of performance coaching and mindset coaching, one of my favorite ones is, if you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't, right? Truly, from a mindset perspective, the mind, you're in control of your mind. The other one is that, I wake up every morning and I say these affirmations to myself because I think it's very, very important that I stay on target with what the change that I'm trying to affect. And I have a guru that taught me these other things, and I'm just going to try to remember them off the top of my head, like I do when I'm lying in bed. Every morning I say, I, Katy, now choose to be the very best container for the purpose I am to serve.
Mm.
Um, first comes my connection with the divine, and next comes my work as a savior of the world. And that's not meant to be arrogant. It's just literally, what's my purpose and where's my connection to the universe? Because I believe in that. And then what's my part, right? And my purpose. And then secondary to that, I always say, I just for today, I let go of whatever it is, anger, I let go of worry. I I do the best that I can, being kind to myself and to others. And those really have been my go-to mantras, or just, it's not even a mantra, it's who I am, right? After you've owned it for a while. So if that helps anybody, yeah, that's kind of what I live by.
Thank you for sharing. Is there a spot, and I will obviously have links on the descriptions with the podcast on YouTube and all of the podcast platforms, but is there some place that people can get a hold of you for your services? And
Sure. So we have two websites set up for me. One is katygoshtasbi.com. It's literally my first name, my last name.com. And they can always learn about me personally there. And then purisconsulting.com, Puris like Sam, consulting.com. And Puris is not a word, it's a made up word, some form of what triggers my mind is pure. And then if they want to email me, they can find me at Katy, Katy, at purisconsulting.com.
thank you so much for taking the time to talk today and share your insight and your story and your knowledge, and even all about how you went through understanding where your limitations were on confidence and how to gain it, and how much you're working to help others and through learning more techniques. I know you're learning those techniques. I've spent some training with you and learning even more, and you'll be able to help people even more from there. So I commend you for what you're doing. Thank you.
Lisa, and I as well to you. As we both know, it's a lifelong journey. You're never done. It really is a practice, like a yoga practice, like a meditation practice. Living and growing is a practice. And so the goal is, I think, to do it with as much ease and grace as we can allow ourselves, and experience it all.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks everyone for listening. I do appreciate you. Please like or sign up as subscribe so that you can find when the new episodes are being launched. It's always the 1st and the 8th of the month. So you know that. Just keep that in your mind. And we love having you. Thanks again, Katy, and everyone have a wonderful day.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for listening or watching. Please subscribe to the Ladies Who Leap podcast to be notified of new episodes. And I would love to hear from you. Let me know what works, what doesn't, and if you have a story to tell, please reach out. Come join the Leap community at the Ladies Who Leap Club Facebook group. Remember, leaping out of your comfort zone is where the growth happens.